Great. Hey, I'm First Coast News meteorologist Michaela Lucero with an update on Hurricane Ian. So this is a quick look right now what we're seeing across satellite and radar. You can see we've got some thunder, we've got some lightning alongside the eye of that storm, and it is dropping very heavy rainfall across the entire state of Florida. Now, as we get a closer look at what we're seeing across the First Coast, already starting to see some showers as well as those very, very gloomy skies. Now, this is a different radar that I'm showing you, and it's got a good handle on what the rain is looking like. So we're seeing quite a few showers just now spilling into Duval County, southern portions of Nassau and Clay, with a few pockets of heavier rainfall between Palm Coast and St. Augustine. Now that rain is going to continue to spill into our area over the next several hours, and a few of those pockets are going to definitely start to become a little bit heavier, and this is when we really got to start monitoring that flood risk. Some steady rainfall expected over the next couple of days. All right, your tropical alerts across the area. Tropical storm warning for all the counties you see there in orange. Tropical storm watch for the counties you see there in yellow. So the warning is including Duval County, St. Johns County, Nassau County as well. Storm surge warning for all the areas in purple, pretty much the entire coast, and that's including many of our major rivers, including the St. Johns River. All right, here is a current look at the track of the storm. This is what Hurricane Ian looks like at the moment as far as the 2 o'clock update from the National Hurricane Center. This is expected to weaken as it moves over land, becoming a tropical storm by about Thursday morning. And then right now, it looks like it's going to start to swing off towards the Atlantic, to come back off into the Atlantic. It might gain just a little bit more strength as it gets back over water, and then it right now looks like it's going to recurve and impact places like Savannah. So here's why this is some good news for the First Coast. Usually when we get tornadic activity from these storm systems, it comes from what we call the dirty side of the storm, or that northwest quadrant of the storm, or northeast quadrant of the storm. Here's the good news. That looks like it's going to move off the coast, so we're not going to get that in our area quite as much as what we were maybe thinking a few days ago. So got some good news there as the track continues to develop across our region. So be prepared for some heavy rainfall over the next several days. We're just now starting to get the rain in our area. If you live in southeast Georgia, you have still just a little bit of time to prepare yourself as this storm starts to approach our area. And again, we're still watching the threat for some very significant flooding across our region, as well as some very gusty winds that we're going to be seeing as well. All right, we've got meteorologist Tim Deegan here with us as well, who's got some more updates on kind of what we're seeing at the moment, as well as a little bit more of the precision cast, what people are expecting in their own areas. Tim?
All right, thank you very much, Michaela. And for those of you that were not here 9 months ago, Michaela worked right here on the First Coast. She's down here now from Washington, D.C., but she knows the area, and she has and will continue to be a big help. That is for sure. Okay, so let's put things in perspective. Here we are in Jacksonville. The hurricane, still a Category 4, is now coming ashore on the west central coast. Think about 40 to 60 miles south of Tampa, north of Fort Myers. I think the hardest hit area as far as potentially getting a 16 to 18-foot storm surge will be at a place called Port Charlotte. We've got reports at Redfish Pass. This is near there now. The highest report of winds so far that we've heard of 128 miles per hour. But what about us here on the First Coast? Again, we're not going to receive anything like what they are, but we're still going to have a pretty significant event. It's going to be the combination of rain and then the ocean coming in, tides. And so we're just going to talk about water level rise. It's going to be a combination of technically the storm surge and then also rainfall totals. Now, what we want to keep, obviously the rain has come into the area. What we want to keep a close watch on is, you see where, right here, you can see the circulation. This is the circulation that's purely rotating around the hurricane. On the perimeter of that circulation, strong winds with tropical moisture is then hitting the front. The front is what cooled us down and brought in some drier air. And where it hits the front is where the heaviest rains will be. And for a while now, what we'll see will be as it hits the front, there'll be a wave. I think we see one here. We'll see a wave of heavy rain. There it is. And then that'll fall apart as then another wave develops. Not only that, but we have strong winds above these clouds from the west. And so much of these, a significant amount of these rains, once they form, and watch this cluster here, you'll see it decrease along the coast because there's shear. It's being blown off to the east. That's good news. But eventually, this band of where the heavier rains and even some thunderstorms are forming, that's going to work into Flagler. It's going to work into St. Johns County and then farther off to the north. But even this picture here paints why the heavier rainfall totals are going to be for those of you from Duval southeast versus those of you off toward the northwest. Again, here is the overall curve making an S right around our cove. Relatively speaking, folks, we're in a pretty good spot as far as that is concerned. But why are we under a hurricane watch when, if you look at the numbers, the forecast is actually by Thursday morning, it's going to be down to a tropical storm over Orlando. A strong tropical storm gets over the ocean and over the warmer waters, maintains its strength. We're not forecasting it to intensify. You might think it would, but with it being over the warmer waters, that would give reason for intensification. But there's going to be dry air being pulled into it. And so right now we feel like that combination of the dry air trying to weaken it and the warm water, especially the Gulf Stream trying to strengthen it, will maintain it as a significant tropical storm. So still you may be saying, so why a hurricane watch? Well, this cone is not something that changes with each hurricane. It's an error average of the last 10 years. And so the Hurricane Center, although they're forecasting this, they know that there's just as likely a chance that the storm could come right over the coast over us, or it could go farther off to the east. And so for that reason, they've issued a hurricane watch versus a warning. But you may still be saying, well, okay, that explains location. What about intensity? Because the forecast is for a tropical storm. Well, they also, 36 to 48 hours out, and that's about what we're talking about as this goes by, they avail themselves to a 20% error. So 20% error of 65 on the upside would therefore be a Category 1 hurricane. So that's why the hurricane watch is there. Here's a closer look. But it's also why we're also giving county by county for those of you in southeastern Georgia. But note that even if this were to become stronger, but if it stays close to the track, there's probably more of a concern up toward Hilton Head. The forecast is that this will be up near Hilton Head on Saturday morning. So again, this is on the move. In fact, by the time Ian gets about here, the state line, Florida, Georgia state line, and in fact, if that happens by 8 a.m., then our winds will start to become northwesterly, the rains will decrease, and we will no longer see the ocean pour in. In fact, if anything, it'll start allowing the estuaries and all of that salt water to get on out of there. All right, we're going to continue here. I'm not sure for how much longer. Do we know how much longer we'll do this for? About another 2 minutes. So over the next 2 minutes, I'm going to try to give you the headlines. Obviously, this is a hurricane. For those of you with loved ones down there, know that although Tampa is being hit hard, at least it's hitting south of them. And what that means is the winds are hard out of the northeast and the Gulf is not pouring into the Gulf of Mexico. On the other hand, for those of you down that have family members, friends, Sarasota, Bradenton, Punta Gorda, but again, the hardest hit area I think we're going to end up finding out is a place called Port Charlotte, and even on down to Fort Myers, Sanibel. Sanibel's had some wind gusts over 100 miles per hour. These are the hardest hit areas, although still that we've seen damage and some pretty significant rains and severe thunderstorms all the way on the other side of the coast, from the Keys through Miami and working up to the south. In fact, we're going to keep a close watch on what's happening on the East Coast as forecasters, because some of that will try to get up toward us here on the first coast. So here's a closer look. We showed you the radar. Remember, the more intense colors indicate the colder cloud tops, and the colder cloud tops indicate the higher cloud tops, and that's where the heavier rains will be. What we're going to watch is that, again, the strong southerly winds hit the front. Those cause thunderstorms. As long as they develop there and then get pulled off to the northeast, that's good news for us. It's when we see these bands wrapping around the center or around the core of the hurricane that our rains will become steadier. So we're going to watch this forecast very closely. For instance, this blob of thunderstorms, is that going to stay just offshore, or is that going to be pulled our way? You notice we're giving you a rainfall range of 6 to as much as 14 inches of rain, and some of that will depend on just how it's all going to go. So with all of that said, here's our headline. The highest risk of flooding, so that's going to be the accumulative rains and the high tides, will be from tonight's high tide, 1 a.m. Thursday, through 7 a.m. on Friday. That's 3 high tides, early Thursday, Friday afternoon, and then early Friday. Rainfall total 6 to 4 inches. And overall, the water level is rising about 4 feet. We're going to wrap it up for now. We will be back in an hour with updates. I believe, Michaela, folks can talk to us, right?
Yes, we're on our streaming platforms.
Okay.
And if you see any of our posts on social media and you have questions, drop them there.
Okay, I
and
wanted to make sure. So I guess you could hear Michaela. So I'm just going to underline what Michaela said, and that is that we really want to hear from you. Because we'll continue to give you forecasts, but if you tell us what you see, if you tell us what your questions are, then we can really focus in on what you're wondering. Because I guarantee you, if you're wondering something, there's probably 10,000 other people at least that are wondering that same thing, so you're helping us out. We'll see you in an hour.